Don't ask. Well, good evening to you folks. How are you? It's good to see you. It's good to be seen by you. I, who am doing the seeing of you and feeling good about the being seen by you, am, of course, Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver, and I hope you're having a wonderful evening. The car situation was simply a dead battery. I imagine it will be dead tomorrow morning because we had someone come out with a jump pack, hit the car, drove home, and it will likely be kaput tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, I got the Hawaiian shirt tonight. This is not a Magnum PI one. I got this in a store. I got this at Target. My red Magnum PI is awaiting being washed. RPG Grandma, Gaming with ADHD, Alan Rizkala, Mark Hoover, Sausage Toes, the Mad Railroad Conductor. Are you conducting railroads when you're angry? I don't think you should do that. Joshua Garlock, Collecting Chaos. Connect, Uncle Brat, Robert Phillips. Good to see you all. Getting the lead out. Darn right. Small crowd tonight, but that's okay. We can roll with a small crowd. Hey, good news. Next Wednesday, Kyle returns. So we'll be back for gaming and live streaming on Wednesday. Next Thursday, and this is kind of interesting, and I hope you guys will like this. Stephen Radney McFarland will be on the show. He is from Gripner Games. Stephen has worked, or rather he did work for Wizards of the Coast for many, many years. He worked on some Greyhawk stuff for 3E, granted, but we'll pick his brain. We'll do it. I have a Sawzall. But Stephen will be here. He's going to be talking about the Glimmering, which is a thing that they've got going on, and he's going to fill us in on all the details on that. They're trying to get that off the ground. And it's kind of interesting because when they talked to me about it, I was a little like, what? Because I have an IT background. And when you start throwing around terminology like blockchain and NFT, obviously your mind tends to go to like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? But they have actually, they say they have a way to incorporate that into their tabletop offering, not in the sense of it's a get rich quick thing, but in the sense of it's a way to track stuff that is unique to your character. And Lux Armok, good to see you. Glad to hear you're still alive. If it is something that can be harnessed for good rather than for selling people horrifying CGI movies of Madonna, and don't Google that. Don't Google that. And cartoon chimpanzees, then all the better, says I. But he's going to be here and he's going to talk to us about those offerings. Because you know how we do. We open up our doors to those who would talk to us about cool things around these places. And I full disclosure, I did chit chat with him a little bit first because, I wanted to make sure that this was something you guys might dig. And I think it is. So we're going to bring it on. And if you check them out on the web, and I'll share links with you guys in a little bit, and you're like, I have questions about this. You can have them to hand. Jorge, good to see you. You can have them to hand, and you can ask them of him. Or if you're not going to make the stream, you can ask me, and I'll ask him. Clanner Jake, good to see you. But anyway, moving all along. Speaking of the web, guess what? This show is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Whether it's for 5th edition, OSR, Castles and Crusades, Hellebarde Games makes the modules that they'd like to play, and old school is in play at the table when you're playing a Hellebarde Games adventure. Now, you can check them out on their website at hellebardegames.com or find them over on DriveThruRPG. That's Hellebarde Games. And we like us some Hellebarde Games around here. So anyway, yeah, we're open, and get your libations set up, and we'll talk about whatever, because it's open Thursday evening. I have no particularly pressing problems to pronounce profoundly perforce. Perhaps party has some parity. I don't know. I'm going to stop with the alliteration. Clanner Jake says, I was getting Chrome up. My AI program eats my GPU resources, but Doomsword is helping me not KO my system because he's a legend. Doomsword is a legend. We love us some Doomsword Deathmaster here around the Delver's Dungeon. GaryCon updates in any games, not officially, not yet. I've got to talk to some people. So we shall see. I shall look at the menu and see what is upon it. But there's a lot of stuff I'm going to see. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to film. Record. Do we say film? That's like the save icon looking like a floppy disk, or the render icon for a video looking like a piece of film, No, I'm not, Jake. I'm not going to be able to run a game at GaryCon, unfortunately. Unless I just commandeer a table in a hallway and plunk down and start playing. But hell, I could potentially do that, but it would be super sketch, it would be super sketch. And the funny thing is like, I went out and I was like, well, clearly it's going to tell me I can't register a game if I attempt to register a game. And I registered a game and I was like, hooray. And I just kind of came up with something off the cuff, dungeon crawl kind of thing, and just put the instructions, the destructions there. And like a couple of hours later, I got bounced back from their website. I got an email bounce back that from GaryCon that said, hey, did you mean virtual GaryCon? Because we don't have any slots available. Which you would think that if that was the case, they wouldn't let you do it. So I responded back and I said, no, just delete it. And then Skip Williams emails me and he's like, I don't know why you're emailing me if this needs to be deleted. Just blah, blah, blah. And I was like, delete it. I don't care. You're not going to let me game, or you're not going to let me run a game. Let me be very clear about that. Robert Phillips. Yes, we've got the video. I'm not a vampire. I'm a driving instructor from Johannesburg, South Africa. Great moments in history. played in Jakandar as a paladin that was problematic as everyone was undead. I could see that, yes. You're Hellabard. Mark, what'd you get from Hellabard? Mark, do a text unboxing for us real quick. What'd you get? What'd you get? What'd you get? Collecting Chaos says, I completed a run of comics today. Now, after 40 years, I could finally read all of the Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew. Not familiar with that one. Is that the old, was it Warp Graphics did the Flaming Carrot? Was Flaming Carrot Warp Graphics? I can honestly not remember. You know what? Let's see. No, he was originally published on Aardvark Vanaheim. Yes, thank you. A print module by, oh, yeah, well, that guy, I mean, that just, you know what? That's probably just packing material for more important things. So you can throw that in the trash knowing that it protected actually valuable modules. You know, I got to say, so I started reading. I've been feeling a little under the weather, not wanting to do a bunch. I don't know what it is. I think it's I think it's like allergic. There's the pollen's everywhere. As I wake up, you know, and just bah, and just you know what I'm talking about. So been buying things from Robkins. I have a ton of stuff that Paul Stormberg sent me of Robkins. I've kind of like a thumb drive packed with stuff, not pirated stuff. That's how the company actually offered their PDFs for sale. There's like a DVD-ROM, and then there's also a thumb drive. It's around here someday, and we should do like a deep dive look at some of that stuff one of these days. But no, Mark, it is gorgeous. Did he have any of the removable cover ones left? I think he sold out of those back in the fall, but I could be wrong because like he had some print samples that had the TSR style removable covers. I have one of those. Mwah. They are magnificent. But anyway, there was this period in the 80s when I was trying to catch the crest of the wave of the new hot thing. And this has to do with me not feeling well. So as I've been feeling well and just been kind of trying to relax and, you know, keep hydrated, keep drinking fluids, that sort of thing. I finally started reading Elf Lord comics from Aircell. Now, if you don't remember, this was a few months ago. I bought the first volume of Elf Lord, and it was a small press in Canada called Aircell, AIRCEL, which sounds really cool. It conjures up images of Airtight Garage by Jean Giraud, Mobius. Cell, of course, you know, Animation Cell, that sort of thing. And the funny reality is the Aircell comics, back in the 1970s and 80s, the government of Canada gave massive subsidies. Like they would basically write you a check if you would get your house better insulated, which is a noble thing. We can argue government spending money to give to other people, but Aircell was an insulation company. They did heating and cooling systems up in Canada. And so the government in like 1984 said, we're done with this. We're done spending tens of millions in taxpayer money to pay people to insulate their houses and get central air and heating installed. So the guy who ran the business, was like, well, I guess we'll shutter it. A friend of his who was trying to get his fantasy comic book published and set up a business said, wait a minute, why don't we just use your business that I have worked for? We don't have to go through the trouble of setting up a whole different business, LLC, that sort of thing. Hail Michael Connor, Unbreaded. So they did, and they kept the name and everything, Aircell. It sounds very artistic and everything, but it refers to the installation of air conditioners and insulation. Collecting Chaos knows what I'm talking about. So Elf Lord, and I saw it. I was intrigued by it, but I never added it to my stack back when I was a kid and never picked up any issues, because that was, I tell you what, the mid 1980s were probably the best time ever for independent comics. So many great indies came out from the late 70s, early to mid 80s. Now it's something else we could argue about till the end times, but we can argue the merits or not about Dave Sims' Cerebus the Aardvark. But that was one of them, and he started it as a Conan parody. Here's a little cartoon Aardvark who goes out and has fantasy adventures, and people fell all over themselves. Now, the thing about it is a lot of these comics back in the day came out very sporadically. I think, ElfQuest started out with 3 issues a year because the artists and writers had day jobs, and to sit down and spend that much time. But ElfQuest, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all you people who think TMNT are cutesy toys, they're not. They started out as a hyper violent adult comic. So Laird and Eastman launched this. I didn't even, because I got out of comic books in the late 80s, I didn't even realize that had gotten picked up and turned into like children's pop culture until that movie hit, and it was, what was it, Fleer or Archie Comics or somebody was publishing these very kid-friendly TMNT comics. I'm like, that's not like it. But if you had a green and white, was it green and white mono TMNT issue number 1, man, you were sitting on a gold mine. And I tried so hard to Grendel, RPG Grandma Grendel. But I tried. Yes. Well, no, Shredder. I don't know if Shredder came back, but I did get reprints of the TMNT comics just to check them out. So I had like the first run of TMNT, but it was like the 12th printing, it wasn't worth more than cover price. But they fought Shredder on top of a building. They killed his minions and everything. And Leonardo threw his wakizashi at Shredder's feet and said, you know what the honorable thing to do is. And instead, Shredder said, I'm not doing the honorable thing, and pulled out like an anti-tank grenade, like 2 mason jar size grenade. And they were like, well, poop. And they fled and there was an explosion, and like Shredder's helmet, they found Shredder's helmet on the ground. I don't know if Shredder in fact did not die at that point, but it certainly would fit the darker, edgier original TMNT if he came back and they killed him. But that was a dynamic time for comic books. That was a very dynamic time for comic books. I remember when, Judge Dredd was a little disappointing when it came to the US because I knew that there was gorgeous black and white art in Judge Dredd. Was it DC or Marvel that picked them up? I don't remember. But when it came out in the US, they shrank it down to floppy comic size and colored everything. So you could tell there was art that was destroyed by the process of the photo copying and shrinking it down. Joshua. TMNT early on was bloody and violent. They cursed. You know, I remember they beat up a bunch of Foot Clan and like they threw one off of like a 2-story building into a dumpster and one of the turtles said, sayonara shitball. Just scandalized my 15 or 16-year-old self. Eagle. Okay. I mentioned ElfQuest. There was a comic book version, which unfortunately lasted very few issues, that of the Myth, Robert Asprin's Myth Adventures. You're just talking about him the other night. Phil Foglio did those comics. Until he didn't, the new guy they brought in wasn't nearly as good. But I loved those because Foglio had done the cover of the Dawning Starblaze issues, which I lent to my girlfriend, and she lent to her brother, who was a submariner, not the superhero, in the U.S. Navy. And they went with him, and I never saw them again. But during that time period, the turtle, you're darn right, Jorge. Yeah. But during that time period, so much good stuff. And I grabbed, almost said ElfQuest. I did read ElfQuest when I was a kid. I got the Starblaze for the giant size graphic novels. Was in love with ElfQuest for a little while. But Elf Lord, I said, well, did I miss out on anything? And like I don't have any truly quote unquote collectible comics anymore. I mean, I have like a second print run of The Crow by Joe O'Barr, which, if you only know The Crow from the movie or the TV show, man, brace yourself. Brace yourself. How Robbins is similar to Bill, but Bill also has Kenosha. Wait, me? When you say Bill, are you referring to me, Drone Swarm? So there I was reading comics when I was just a little kid. Yes, there was James O'Barr. Thank you, Kabuki. Yes, there was a Crow TV show, and it was not good. It was bad. I thought the movie was bad. Had nothing to do with the death of Brandon Lee, which was a tragedy. But James O'Barr went through horrible stuff in his life. And you can tell, like, there are pages where you can tell he was rage drawing. All right? Like, you can practically see drop shadows from the indentations of his pen and pencil. And then you go to the next page and it's fairly not, you can track the man's moods through it. It is probably one of the most emotionally devastating comics, knowing the stuff that was going on and had gone on in his life to drive him through it. But I keep getting off the track. I started reading Elf Lord. You got to hear me when the Alabama starts to come out, my boys drone swarm. Because I'll just start talking like this without even realizing it. Roll Tide. But the first issue, I'm through the first issue. I'm not ready to get, this is just like a capsule preview, like lowercase p, capital R view. Art is competent. This is in an age when typesetting and so on was not, at least for the small press guys. And the lettering is all done by hand. And my old eyes, like I'm sitting trying to read this, I just went and got my painting goggles to be able to read that spidery text in there. I mean, it's okay. So far, it's okay. Nothing's jumping out at me. Every issue of a comic should follow establishment, crisis, shocking revelation, cliffhanger. Those are the three elements you need in the first issue of, if you're doing a long-running series of comics. Build the characters up a little, introduce them, create the first crisis, and then give us a cliffhanger ending to have us come back. And it follows those elements very, very well. And but it's not like, it's not Tolkien, it's not Leiber, it's not Howard. There is one frame or one panel, which I will share with you guys. I'll try and get it scanned, which is a very lovely homage to, I'll leave it up to you to judge who it might be an homage to, whether it's Hildebrandt or Bakshi, Lord of the Rings. But I'll share that with you guys at the appropriate time. That one ran through the 90s, though. That one, what? Or if that was directed, I don't even know if that was directed at me. But yeah, no, there's a lot of there's a lot of comics from that time period that, and it was literally hit or miss. And I know guys who filled long boxes with just stuff that was just garbage, like 1 off, 2 off, 3 off, whatever. But we were all looking for the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Elf Quest or what have you, or even Elf Lord. Before they switched to the floppy format, Elf Lord was yes, I have played MERP, Joshua. I have played MERP. But you can actually see Elf Lord in an episode of You Can't Do That on TV, because the first print run, the dude like photocopied them and comb bound them. And there's a scene in You Can't Do That on TV when they're kind of in the open area with the geodesic background thing. You guys know what I'm talking about. You can't do that on TV, where one of the characters is reading an issue of Elf Lord, and somebody comes over and talks to her, and she closes it, and you can see the cover. But anyway, to answer your question, Joshua, yes, I have played Middle-earth role-playing. It's better than Rolemaster, but not by much. It is incredibly too top-heavy. I mean, the MERP lore was good. It's better than Rings of Power. But man, oh, what a terrible system. It was so slow. It was so slow. Yeah, you can't do that on TV. As one of those things. It's like Prisoners of Gravity. That's another one. There's a lot of Prisoners of Gravity. You can find bits and pieces of on YouTube, but then there's a lot of it that's just gone. I mean, there were some MERP supplements that just, the design, the cover art, the illustrations were just eye-wateringly gorgeous, and the text inside them was very well done. MERP actually kind of towed the line a little bit, because they said, hey, this will work with any 6-stat role-playing game, and here's how you convert these numbers from percentages to values of 3 to 18. So they released some MERP supplements that were essentially intended to be used with advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, Turkey TV was another good one. Ivan Tell a Lie. What's another good one from that? Oh, Journey. Journey was a good comic book. If you're not a fan yet, if you're not yet a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, there is a wonderful and lovely tribute to Usagi Yojimbo in one episode of Avatar. It is a brief blink and you'll miss it moment. I won't spoil it. If you're a fan of that and you haven't watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, but you've been meaning to, when you get to it, you'll have the Leonardo DiCaprio moment when you see it. Dark Horse was very, very good when they first started. I remember 90, 91, 92 era of Dark Horse. Probably the best Dark Horse Aliens comic. Like when they kind of went off the reservation and just started doing their own Aliens storyline. Those varied in both art and story quality, but they were generally pretty good. Yes, collecting. I believe that is correct. but it's called Aliens Labyrinth. The art is top notch. The art is phenomenal, and the story is utterly, crushingly bleak. Look, I'm going to put all kinds of trigger warnings on that. If you go out and you're like, oh, I can read comics online and I'll check out Aliens Labyrinth. Geiger never imagined such body horror. All right. In his most fevered LSD trips, I don't think Geiger ever envisioned some of the stuff that is in Aliens Labyrinth. The best Terminator comic I've ever read was Now Comics did a 6-issue run, which I may still have. I hope I still have. I'll have to look and see if I still have. And if not, acquire it, called Terminator: The Burning Earth. And it is about the last assault on Skynet. Unbelievably bleak. There's a monologue by John Connor. And like, they've tried in several iterations to portray him in the movies as, you know, being this, you know, hyper dangerous warrior type alpha male, which is fine. Which is, I mean, the movies are terrible. Hey, John Walker. But the Now Comics Terminator: The Burning Earth, it's a very, very, very different John Connor. And, you know, humanity, like a semi-functional military, that sort of, it's that it is not. If you get a chance to read it, just brace yourself. It is fairly unhappy in most places. I remember that. Yeah, the wrong Sarah Connor with no Kyle to warn her, just trying to deal with one of the variant Terminators. There never should have been more than 2 movies. Let's just pretend there were never more than 2 movies. What else was good back then? Late 80s to early 90s. Dark Horse Presents was a wonderful comic. When they would just throw stuff in there, and I remember reading some DHP back in the day. Was there a Big Trouble in Little China comic, John? I honestly don't know. Love and Rockets was interesting because I picked it up as a kid because I thought it would be science fiction, and was the 2 guys doing, or the guy I feel, for some reason I feel like it was a pair, like brothers, but anyway, Splinter. Yeah, Splinter. But anyway, Love and Rockets, like the first 2 issues, they tried to do like a science fiction thing, and then they were literally just like, you know what, this is just slice of life now. It's like there are some way in the background science fiction trappings, but it's just slice of life. what we find so compelling about the post-apocalypse, I think the idea that we will continue in some capacity, that our better natures will allow us to overcome, to rebuild, to see what we can do with the least amount possible. And I'm of two minds. I'll tell you what the story with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. poster. Well, there's nothing special about it other than it was a gift, and I like it quite a bit. It was from my sister-in-law. I got that for Christmas one year. She knows I like comic booky kind of things, so she got me that, and there it hangs on my door to my workshop. Yeah, Bill Willingham. Good stuff. Anyway, to go back to the post-apocalypse, realistically, if we're talking about 3,000 megaton exchange, you know, you like to think that you live in a relatively safe place. The fact of the matter is, if you have an airport that can handle international flights or even intracontinental flights, you might be a disbursement point or a recovery point for U.S. strategic bombers, which means that some planner in Russia has drawn a little green circle around your quiet little suburb. We have Orlando International Airport, which was McCoy Air Base. B-52 Ds were based there for the longest time and stood alert. Of course, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, they'd be 90 minutes out of Havana, assuming they weren't vaporized, because the missiles that the Soviets wanted to put in Cuba had a range such that they could reach Savannah, Georgia. So there's Orlando International Airport, formerly McCoy, and then there's a former Naval Air Station, NAS Sanford, which is now an international airport. They flew RA-5C Vigilantes, among others, and it was a training base for U.S. Navy jets for a long time, which is that way about I don't know, 20 minutes at most, probably more like 15. So if someone decides to, say, let's immunize the Eschaton boys, Tampa Bay, the city of Tampa is where Southwest Com is, and they ran the GWAT. All right, the Global War on Terror was run out of Tampa. Patrick Air Force Base, Cape Canaveral, they do military satellite launches all the time. And again, Patrick is an air base. I just kind of imagine that if some maniac decides to do the unthinkable, I'm not going to be like, wow, the big cities really got smashed up and, it's been tough to get food here, but we're holding our own. No. I harbor no illusions about it. I mean, we've all seen variations on the maps of what gets hit and where, and quite frankly, I think rural Oregon, you might be safe. Lux says, some might argue that the closest places to the strategic points are the best places to be. Well, I mean, it's like John Wood, as Professor Falcon said in War Games, I've planned ahead. We're just 3 miles away from a primary site. A millisecond of brilliant light and then nothing. Certainly better than the millions who will wander blind through the ruins, don't you think? But hey, it ain't gonna happen. I don't think it'll happen anyway. Sorry, I'm just catching up with you guys. Didn't want to miss any. Jeremy says, what did I walk into? Somebody asked me about post-apocalypse stuff, Jeremy. Stop playing war games, stop playing D&D. No! Absolutely not. Thank you. If you have a specific question, Jeremy, that you'd like to ask, well, you know what to do. A internet buddy of mine named Mike, and I will share if I can find this link, because let's see. This. You should absolutely check this out. He is working on a novel, which is on hold right now, for reasons that will become obvious if you read this. But we've had Mike C on the show before. He is a brilliant author, and his website is it is a ripping yarn. If you're like, well, look, I've read Red Storm Rising. Why would I read another one? This is definitely a different bird altogether. Have I ever done Sword of the Dales module? I have not. If that was directed at me. But Mike is also a tabletop gamer, and a lot of these scenarios, a lot of the smaller battles, he gamed out. I really want to spoil that for you. Are there any celebrities who play D&D, athletes or actors? Tons. Lots of them. It is the cause celeb. It is the cool thing du jour to be seen doing. So lots and lots and lots and lots of them. Joe Manganiello does. Vin Diesel, like half of his Hollywood personality is in play D&D. You know, that was more that was more Sylvester Stallone, and I don't know or think if whether or not Sylvester Stallone plays D&D. Hey, I rolled up a fighter, and I played that in Rocky, a fighter. Yes, Tom Morello is a D&D player. I know some others who are, but I've actually been, I've been requested not to say. I guess, Mike Myers did a bit a few times on SNL. Lothar of the Hill People. Lothar of the Hill People was his D&D character. That makes perfect sense. I think I think that is no Planet of the Apes TTRPG. Yes, there is. It's called Gamma World. You maniacs. Oh, well, thank you, Druid Swam. I do my best. What can I say? Just you go all congested. You throw a little New Jersey accent, and you do your best. Colbert used to play. He says Colbert has said he played D&D with Len Lakofka at Gen Con one year. Entirely believable. Yes, there is Gamma World. Hey, we're playing some Gamma World tomorrow night. Little post-apocalypse, those robots, power armor, all that kind of thing. Of course, the late, great, and unbelievably missed Robin Williams, huge tabletop gamer, and Billy Crystal also. I should point that out. No, Williams played. Williams was a fan of Harlequins. He had a rather large Harlequin army. His daughter did a live stream a couple of years ago, and basically was like holding up, because she never did a lot of tabletop gaming. Video games were her jam, and she was holding up like, Eldar Warwalkers and stuff like that, asking people what they are, and getting some feedback there. I like the aesthetic of the Tau. I think like the miniatures are gorgeous, the tanks, the aircraft, everything about the Tau is cool. I don't like them in 40K. They are much too noble bright for 40K. Henry Cavill, 40K fan, probably a D&D player of some stripe or another. Of course, Bill Sylvie, I've heard, is a big D&D fan. Zelda, that's right. So I've mentioned this story before. Anderson Cooper, that's kind of interesting, Jeremy. Anderson Cooper is a D&D player. That kind of tracks. That kind of makes sense. But I've told this story before, and I want this to be true. It's the most wonderful thing. This comes from a rather reliable source, but this story is so old that it was told originally, I think, on Usenet. But the story goes, there's a fellow, he related this for first person and said, I was a store owner. Question, this happened to me. But the story goes, he had a large hobby shop that did gangbusters 40K sales and whatnot in San Francisco. And he's closing up one evening, it's 7 or 8 or whatever. And like a lot of specialty shops with not much wisdom on don't cover up your windows with stuff and make it very easy for somebody to walk in and stick a gun in your face and not be seen by the police. He had his posters all over his windows and stuff like that. So he's getting ready to count down the registers, and there's a few people, hangers on in the shop. And he's got the closed sign. Somebody starts banging on the door, and he yells, "We are closed." And so there's a pause, and then there's banging again. And he kind of steps towards the door. He can see legs, a few people standing out. And he says, "We are closed." And the voice on the other side of the door says, "Hey, we drove up from LA today to come to your shop. Come on, man. It's just a few minutes." And he's like, "I'm sorry." Before you can finish it, the person who's been knocking on the door and talking bends down so he can see through the open glass. Not the other day. This wasn't the other day, but anyway. And who's looking through the glass but Billy Crystal? So he opens the door. There's Billy Crystal, one of his younger kids, Robin Williams, and Zelda. It really drives me bonkers when that damn cat jumps on the table. So they come in, very apologetic for making him keep the store open, and they dropped a bundle on 40K stuff. And apparently it was a blast. He was just like very friendly, and he cracked a lot of jokes. He taught, made the gay ballet instructor jokes constantly about the Eldar and the Harlequins and so on. And it was simply amazing. They spent thousands and thousands of bucks on 40K stuff. And they were out. And he took a few pictures, but it was just an amazing story about Robin Williams, and that is really, really sweet. That is a really, really wonderful thing. Brian Jarvis, I thought that shake was for dramatic effect. Oh no, it's just my wife's cat. She is now trying furiously to push over one of my light stands. She's like pushing on it and rubbing her shoulder on it, and she's reached up and tapped it. Well, guess what? It has sandbags on the bottom. You can't do that. Because I'm not paying her attention. So that is the wonderful Robin Williams came to this fellow's gaming store stories. Oh, who was messaging me? She did not break one of the beer glasses. That moved over because I didn't want her to push it off. So I was pushing it behind the monitor like this, because the edge of the table is right there. And it then tipped over and tapped the beer glass next to it. Yeah, Will Wheaton. Can't we as gamers just come together to gatekeep Will Wheaton out of all nerd hobbies? I'm kidding. David Harper, Jim Bob from the Waltons. Oh no, that is really cool. That is super cool. Oh, and of course, not Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, but the late great Peter Cushing. If you go out and look up Peter Cushing Wargaming, the dude like this, he would consider this to be a feat. Okay, like imagine all the shelf behind me, and then if I had a fisheye lens and you could see like the walls, but also covered with shelves, and the floor and the chair. Peter Cushing loved him some historical wargaming. Good night, John Boy. That's right. It's a good night, John Boy. There is stuff weaving in and out here. I did see people talking about opiate issues. But yeah, Peter Cushing loved him. Now I know, we make a lot of those like, oh, I bet Einstein would love D&D, or well, what if you could play D&D with Winston Churchill? No, I firmly believe that Peter Cushing would have loved original D&D. He passed away just after. Well, no, because Peter Cushing was in Top Secret, the Zucker Abrams Zucker, so he was alive into the 80s. So now I don't know if If Peter Cushing, if anybody ever said, "Hey, you like this kind of gaming? Would you like this?" Or maybe he saw it and said, "No, I don't want anything to do with that." Lee Iacocca. No, I could see Lee Iacocca running a wicked game of diplomacy. In fact, it is rumored that for leisure, oh my gosh, I'm going blank. He was Nixon's Secretary of State, Kissinger. For leisure, Kissinger would play Avalon Hill's diplomacy with his staff members. And say what you want about the man, one way or the other. I cannot imagine. Yeah, Peter Cushing was with us for a long time. Hey, Patty Sparler. Lee Iacocca did not play D&D. I refuse to believe that. Christopher Lee, yeah. Well, I mean, because Christopher Lee was in the SOE and very well may have been the inspiration for James Bond. So it'd be hard to get like plots around him. Like, okay, so the Duke summons you all into the royal hall and says, "The giants have been plaguing my lands and raided. Fortunately, they have not raided my city." And Christopher Lee would lean in and say, "I suspect it is you, Your Highness." And just like lay out all the plot points that you had planned, that he was actually in league with the giants. I can believe that, Kabuki. Do you mean multi-classing? But insisting that his assassins could also be lawful good. Christopher Lee would bend your game. And fine, you can be a lawful good assassin. Oh my God. The K-Knight. Yeah. The K-Knight, it's like a regular knight, but the armor is a lot less expensive. It's not terribly comfortable, but it's highly affordable and everybody can get some. Oh, we're just kicking stuff around, Patty. Yeah, that's come on. Clanna Jake wants to know Sean Connery would play. Sean Connery would play Dungeons and Dragons. What do you bloody mean I only get 1 hit point when my character levels? You should get 10, you bastard. And proceeds to drink a bottle of Glenfiddich. I throw my dagger straight into the rogue's back. He's in your party. Are you starting an in-party conflict? I just don't like the way he looks. This is Zardoz the RPG. The gun is good. The penis is evil. Christopher, I feel like Christopher Lee would be a that guy, but also too charming to refuse. Like, you would not think of him as a that guy. You go, he really made me rethink how I was running my D&D game. So now I allow lawful good assassins. You would, like, Connery would be a that guy that you'd be, oh my God. Oh my God. I just got a text. Sean's going to be here. Yeah, Connery. Yeah, Sean's going to be here. I know. Well, do you want to just game with the three of us? He'd show up, clean you out of pizza. Like he would show up with a bottle of scotch, which he would drink in its entirety. Deckard Cain from Diablo. I have the faintest idea what you're talking about, Brodo. I cast sleep Trebek at your mother. Yes. You drive to drive with Sean Connery? Ah, the game. Okay. Yeah, I know who Deckard Cain is, Brodo, and the Connery things. Here's the story about... okay, so the story goes... they asked Sean Connery if he wanted to play Gandalf. And he looked at the script and he said, I didn't understand it, so I passed on it. And then they asked him if they wanted him to play Dumbledore. $2 for the Deckard Cain. Ha, ha, ha. Stay a while and listen. See, here's the thing. Deckard Cain does not have the slurred SH. If Deckard Cain says sleep, he says sleep. If Sean Connery says sleep, he says sleep. Do you hear the difference, lad? Your attack was too slow, no better than that of a clumsy child. Comrades, today we sail into history. I'll put that super up. But, yeah, so they offered him Dumbledore, and he said, I read the script, I didn't understand it, so I passed on it. And both of those movie franchises went on to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they offered him a role in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And he said, I read the script, I didn't understand it, and I signed on to do it because I said, I'm not going to miss out on this. There can be only one. Imagine Jonathan Winters playing D&D. He might have. He was friends with him, and Robin Williams were tight. Bill Murray claims he played Garfield in the movie because they thought it was a Coen Brothers film. Somebody told me Judi Dench played D&D. Like, oh, Vin Diesel totally got Judi Dench to play D&D. Has nothing to do with her gender. I just don't picture that at all in my head. I cannot imagine such an accomplished actress sitting still for that long. To play a Dungeons and Dragons game. She ran a game for grandkids. I mean, I could be wrong. Michael Connery. I'll play your game, you rogue. Yeah, it would be like Meryl Streep playing D&D. I can't fathom it. Again, I'm kind of held to hold my tongue. There are some people I've heard in entertainment who play D&D that I'm literally just like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, they don't flaunt it. They don't, it's not like, they don't make it part of their existence or anything. He and Urban used to play on Ridiculous. That was what I heard about, that like Carl Urban, who is also a gaming dork, and Vin Diesel and some other people played a game on the set and they roped her into it. But I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong. Brando playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, Brando would be the guy who'd show up at your game 2 hours late, already sloppy drunk and or high, having not read his character sheet, and he's not gonna read his character sheet. Like, he doesn't sit at the table. He sits out in the living room in a recliner and kicks it back and says, "Tell me when it's my turn to roll." And then staggers over to the table. "All right, what dice do I roll?" And you're like, "Do you even know what game we're playing?" And then he gets pissed and flips the table over and calls you all a bunch of bastards. Helen Mirren, yeah, I could see it. What celebrity do I not want to play D&D? Gosh, let me think. Steven Seagal. I watched a video last night. Now, if we were talking about Bill Murray, and of course, there's the Ned Ryerson. You guys know Ned Ryerson. Which celebrity would Steven Seagal? Steven Seagal would make the worst dungeon master. Hey, Danny. Jeremy's just like, so he's like, who do you think would make the best DM? Here, that's a good impression. Who's some celebrities playing? I'm like a busker over here, that's a good song. Oh, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase would be horrible to play D&D with. I don't care what you think about the scene in or the community episode Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. By every account, I have heard no good stories about Chevy Chase. Just a random story about Chevy Chase. And then I promise I'll go back to Steven Seagal. Someone was relating they were doing like a studio tour. And walking past are Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Chevy Chase. And this guy was there, and his like 9-year-old cousin asks them for their autographs. He recognized Steve Martin, and he kind of recognized Chevy Chase. And Chevy Chase keeps walking. Or no, he stopped. No. He stops and looks at this kid and said they're in their costumes on their way somewhere. And he says, he took the time to say to a child, "Does it look like I have the fucking time for this?" And walks off. And Martin Short and Steve Martin, they look at him retreating and say, "Real nice, Chevy, real nice." And so they did autographs and pictures with him and everything and made it better. But I can't stand Stephen Colbert. I would hate to have to game with him. Anyway, so to go back to so I hope that answers your question, Jeremy. That Steven Seagal would be the worst dungeon master. So Stephen Tobolowsky plays Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. Thousands of attempts over God knows how many years to sell Bill Murray insurance until he finally sells them like 90 packages. He buys them all. And take care, Uncle Brad. I hope it wasn't me saying I don't like I don't like Stephen Colbert that's chasing you away. Rob Gronkowski. I think Gronk does play D&D. I could be wrong about that. There's a few NFL players who do play a lot of D&D. But anyway, so this story has nothing to do with D&D. It has to do with Steven Seagal. Well, in addition to Ned Ryerson, Stephen Tobolowsky plays or played a serial killer in the movie The Glimmer Man, and he's very early in the movie. Yeah, I hate the fact that Steven Seagal camped out in front of the Lee house when Brandon was killed, and then proceeded to offer comments to the press. So it's literally the first day, and the director comes in to Stephen Tobolowsky's trailer and says, "Hey, listen, how you doing? How are things going?" He's like, "Oh, everything's fine. Everything's great. Listen, we have a problem." And he's kind of reeling, and he says, "Well, like, do you have a problem with me? What's going on?" And he says, "Stephen just had a religious epiphany, and he doesn't want to kill anyone in the movie." He's like, "Okay, this is an action movie. What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Nothing. Look, if he comes up to you and talks to you about not wanting to do it, look, we're working on it. Don't say anything to him. All right? Don't engage with him. Don't have that conversation." He's like, "Okay, all right." So they're waiting to be called. And Tom Morello strikes me as the guy who would insist that there's a party pool of money that everybody can take funds from. Jorge knows this story. So Stephen Tobolowsky's standing there. Up walks Steven Seagal. And he doesn't say anything to him, and he says, "I'm not going to do the bit where I kill you." He's like, oh, okay. And he says, I make these movies, and they're so violent. And I'm putting violence and negativity in the world, and I'm showing people, violent things. There's all this violence, and I don't want to be part of that. I don't want that on me, and I don't want to put that on people. And so Tobolowsky thinks for a minute, and he says, but Moby's probably a 5e player. He's like a hardcore 5e player. He probably cried tears of joy when that Strixhaven coffee barista module came out. Anyway. So he's talking to me. He's yeah, no, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to do the scene where I kill you. And so he says to him, "Well, my character plays a serial killer. He's an awful person. He's you find him in a church about to shoot a priest. He's in a holy place. His life is filled. Think about what led him to that point, Stephen. Think about how debased and awful he became. If you kill him, he's released, and that goes out of him, and he can be reborn in a future time. He can be reborn and be made whole. All that negativity is released from him, and he can go on, and he can be better, and he can be good, and he can achieve goodness. But if he's still alive, he's trapped. He's trapped with it. He's trapped with all the negative things that he's done and all the badness that he's brought." He says, so Seagal kind of thinks about it for a minute. "Yes, it's really good when you put it that way. I never thought about that. Yeah, so let's do it. So I'm freeing you." And he's like, "Yeah, you're freeing my character." It's like, yeah, all right, I can do that. I can do that. So they do the scene, and he shoots him, and I would be shocked if Guillermo del Toro does not have, like, just packs with him from film to film the rules for Call of Cthulhu. So he, they do the scene. He gets shot. He dies. About a year goes by. He's at home. Phone rings. It's the movie's director, and he says, "Listen, hey, we're wrapping up post on the Glimmer Man. Steven wants the scene where he killed you. He doesn't want your character to die. He doesn't want that. Can you please come back in and do some ADR, some loops, audio dub recordings? So when you get shot and you fall down and you're lying there on your side, you say something that indicates that you're not dead." And he's like, "Okay, sure." So he goes in and he he's standing there in the booth, and there's I want to say, was it Damon Wayans was in the Glimmer Man, or was it Jamie Foxx? I don't remember, but he played opposite. And he's tried all these different things. It's like, it's just a flesh wound, And finally because they just gave him, like, just say something, and he's like, I tried just groaning in pain, something. And finally, what they settled on was he screams, "Come back and finish me, damn it." So he gets it, they like it, and Jamie Foxx just looks over at him and says, "Man, we're off in Neverland now," and laughs and walks away. Wayans, okay. So he found out later, like when he finally watched the movie, some friends were like, "Oh, let's check this." So they ended up not using it. They were just like, "You know what, screw Steven Seagal. We'll do it anyway." But anyway, so that's my Steven Seagal and Stephen Tobolowsky story. You can find it on YouTube. Star Trek with William Shatner. That could be fun. We have to roll for initiative. I will use my D6. I rolled a 5. All right. Well, Leonard's character takes a direct hit from a hand phaser, and I'm afraid that's going to be 6d6. Ooh, wow. Yeah, 28 points on 6d6. Wow. How many hits did you have? Ooh. Nimoy's like, Spock! Connect, you don't like the bosses. I got to be honest, like on the Monday night games, and you guys see like on the live streams and stuff, I don't do a lot of voices. If I stop for a minute, like, okay, give me a second, I think about this. Let me tell you something. You gotta go in the dungeon, fight goblins, the bad creatures. They'll kill you. Christopher Walken giving an adventure party their marching orders. And thank you again for the super, Jeremy. I can do it, but having to pause constantly like that, I think would get a little, it would get a little tedious, I think, for a party. I mean, I can do, an Irish, English, Scottish thing for dwarves or what have you. Oh, I don't know about D&D with Robert Heinlein. He strikes me as like a hyper rules lawyer DM. Okay, I'm gonna move here, and you pick your miniature up and you move it there. Just a minute now, and like unsnaps a wooden folding ruler and lays it down. You've moved 1/16 of an inch too far. Sorry, let me just bump him back. That would be Heinlein constantly. Heinlein could play Gygaxian Initiative and Surprise properly. He would figure it out. You don't get that vibe from Heinlein. I don't know. Asimov. First of all, Asimov would insist that everyone would have more fun playing Traveler. He'd break out a slide rule and figure out, ship-to-ship combat and all that jazzmatazz, and then not do it. The problem with gaming with Philip K. Dick is about halfway through the game, he would become convinced that you were in whatever fantasy setting you were in. He had issues. I remember as a kid, I think it was in one of the Robots of Dawn books, or maybe it was in one of the early Robot books. There was a sex scene. Now, it wasn't graphic. But you want to talk about boring. I didn't even realize till years later. I was like reading the book, and it was like, and one scene of intimate romance between these. I'm like, okay, yeah, it was that boring. Oh, yay, Brian! Trying to get back to 1E AD&D 40 years off with first edition. That is awesome. Welcome, Brian. Hey, you've been around here before, but I'm glad. What are you doing for books? Are you seeking out on eBay or used bookstores? Are you hoisting the skull and crossbones to get some PDFs, or paying for them? Robert E. Howard would be a fantastic DM. I just have a feeling Robert E. Howard would be sitting there pouring so much detail. Just like you, it's not like, okay, the lizard men are climbing up on the side of the riverboat that you're on. Everybody, what are you doing? He would describe every bestial lizard man, the water dripping off of their scales, their yellow fangs and reddish black claws, and their sinewy bodies rippling as they pulled them. That would be just an absolute blast. You went to eBay and bought one EP. Yay! Thank you, Drone Swarm. Ardu, greetings. Ringo Starr as DM. George R.R. Martin, yes. He started out with D&D like everybody else, but quickly moved to a supers-based system. Trying to keep the cat from trying to walk over here and, by dint of doing so, step on the keyboard, which could potentially disconnect the show. Very cool, Brian. That is awesome. That is awesome. But anyway, I was thinking that same thing, Brodo. Vincent D'Onofrio to DM a game as Robert E. Howard. Yeah, but Martin's TPKs would be like over the most silly stuff. Oh, I leave an extra copper piece for the for the barmaid. Well, her jealous father, who's a half bastard child of incest, rushes out and demands you stop flirting with her. And before you can say no, he cuts your hand off with a sword. Play champions instead. Oh no! Anyway, to get back to Martin, Martin started with D&D, but he switched over to a homebrew superheroes system, which they kind of took some of his campaign ideas and he made wild cards with that. Super World. Thank you, James. That was it. There's a scene in Wild Cards though that I'm just like, dude, really? You put this in a book? You put this in a book? Like, you wrote this? Actually, there's more than a few scenes like that in there. I was just like, what is wrong with this author? I didn't know Martin at the time. I only knew him through Wild Cards, because my buddy Jeff was all about Wild Cards, because let's face it, you could do a really cool hero system game in the Wild Card setting. I know Super World was a game. No, that Quentin Tarantino, you'd be like, okay, we're playing Massive Nyarlathotep. That's a good series of module. Well, like, you see, man, I was thinking we could have like the sandals of Nyarlathotep, but instead of Nyarlathotep, it could be Bast, and you could be questing for the sandals that would go on her feet. And it's, oh God, really? Yeah, she's walking around the table. She's hopped up, and the camera is on a boom arm mounted on the other side of the table, and she's been walking back and forth the space between, basically the 5 feet between me and the camera. Yeah, that's pretty much what a Quentin Tarantino RPG would be. Dark Overlord, greetings. Yeah, he would run. He would think he was being clever and run all of his games. Okay, man, but you're not like a 4th level magic user. You're just like some punk who just came off of his family's farm, right? Like, you started us all at 4th level. Yeah, man, but we're like having a flashback now. Oh God, it's down. Okay. Yeah, Kid Dinosaur being torn apart by the astronomer. The girl that the astronomer sacrificed later. When Fortunato had to get information from the dead kid. That's all I'm going to say about that. More obscure TTRPGs. I used to play chapter 1, then 4, then 2, then 3. And like, he tells like 4 of his 6 players to leave and has 4 randos come in and game just with them for chapter 3. Can I imagine Tim Burton? Tim Burton as a DM might be interesting. Yeah, Millmaster's PFP is from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. Somebody mentioned playing D&D with Jack Black. Jack Black, I think, would be a lot of fun to game with. Oh, what's crap. I've gone blank. Oh my gosh. I can picture the... No, I'm not going to embarrass myself by not knowing this. Let's see. Patton Oswalt, big time gamer. Patton Oswalt is a huge tabletop gamer. Oh, Jake, I'm sorry, man. That sucks. Joe Rogan would want to play like every class, like in a new session. He'd be like, well, look, man, let me tell you what, I'm going to switch classes. I know I was playing a fighter last time, but listen, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to play an assassin. Is that okay with you? Does that work for you? You know, because I haven't sampled the assassin class and I really want to give that a go. Is that all right with you? Just for one session. So listen, let's talk about the assassin class. Wow. That is really amazing. So let's go back to that detail you were telling me earlier. That would be Rogan. And you would wind up with somebody. And when you got to bards, and it's like, well, no, you have to, you start as a fighter and then you go to a thief. Well, okay, let's not do that. Let's do something different. 2 bar of 4Gs. Come on, Jake. Phil Collins might have fun with it. Mac the Knife was interesting in Wild Cards. Yeah, exactly. Oh, Dark Our Lord. Yeah, he would be the guy who would want to use the unarmed combat rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide. No, I'm ready for this. Tell me, go back again. I want to hear that. Tell me that part again where you were saying I roll percentile dice. And all right, so what I'm going to do is here, let me stand up. Let me show you. Come here. Jane, would you come here? Would you stand over here? Look, I'm not going to hit you much, but we're going to. Like old times? Have I not been this good? Have I failed you somehow? I know. I just figured that came with that came with the purchase, as it were. Cyborg Commando is terrible. A celebrity director to DM an RPG. Gamma World. Gamma World. Let's see. Oh, I know who. George Miller made the Mad Max movies. There you go. I think it's a little too on the nose to say, oh, the Blade Runner RPG, Ridley Scott. So I will say Ridley Scott with an historically themed Dungeons and Dragons game. I don't mean one with no magic or anything. I just mean something with a very historical bent. A one-shot through Tomb of Horrors, I would have to say, would be best with Kubrick. Kubrick doing a one-shot run through of Tomb of Horrors. Martin Scorsese to GM too. Boo. No, Martin Scorsese. Let's see. Oh, you know what would be good? A Twilight 2000 game run by Francis Ford Coppola. That depends on how long you've got and when in your life you're playing it. I mean, if you're in high school and it's summer It is a one-shot module. You start playing on Friday afternoon, and you don't stop till sometime Saturday afternoon. A celebrity Tunnels and Trolls GM. That's a good question. Celebrity Tunnels and Trolls GM. If it has to be a director, I'm gonna say maybe Brian Yunza. Yeah, Mod Hunter, I know. A Paul Verhoeven cyber. That's just it. See, you pick a director who's basically done a film version of what you want to game, and it becomes too on that. So it's like, oh, Peter Jackson, Dungeons and Dragons. Well, of course, Peter Jackson is a D&D nerd. I mean, you know, but then Peter Jackson also Zombie Apocalypse does. So, you think Tim Burton for Tunnels and Trolls? Oh, I know who could run a fanciful Tunnels and Trolls games. Of course, the late Jim Henson. Jim Henson would have run a great Tunnels and Trolls game. Oh, Brodo, get out. That's terrible. Roger Waters present. Oh, no. Well, Ursula Le Guin could do an absolutely amazing and epic, just a sprawling sci-fi game using I don't know, Space Master maybe, or I'm drawing a blank. Came from FGU. Help me, a space opera. My DM is Vincent Price. Am I scared yet? Nah, I'm just going to roll up like another 8 characters. Sagran, half a day slightly less you can talk to agents. It's awesome. Now, H.P. Lovecraft famously hated games. Like, he had no use for parlor games. He is quoted in the introduction to 4th edition Call of Cthulhu, where he just... You maintain that. I'm sure Neil Gaiman. I can ask him through a friend of mine who is friends with Neil. I will ask her to ask him if he is a D&D or RPG aficionado, and I'll get back to you guys on that. M. Night Shyamalan for Paranoia. I don't know. You could see his twist coming from a mile away. Whose voice can I ape? Are you asking me? Is that aimed at me, Drone Swarm? Ideal comedian and module to DM. Let's see. I'm going to go with I think Stephen Wright's style would absolutely, unquestionably fit Paranoia perfectly. Are you having a problem, citizen? No, friend computer. You seem to be having a problem. Are you supposed to be in this sector? Yes, here I'm infrared clearance. This is an ultraviolet sector, citizen. Damnly blind. Don't care if she DMs, just as she's there. Jeez, now we're just getting silly. But I guess we'll go for 15 more minutes and just make it an even 2. Now, look, I want to go on record as saying Emily Blunt is a multifaceted, very talented actress. She is good in a great many things. She was excellent in Sicario. The character was terrible. I feel like the way the character was written, her actions and reactions. I mean, most movies, to not freeze their audience out, need to have someone who's us, someone, and everyone. And that's the point that Harrison Ford made about Deckard not being a replicant in Blade Runner, was there has to be somebody for the audience to root for. But in Sicario, which is an amazing movie, Emily Blunt is supposed to be our character, but she is written so terribly. And she starts off being very strong, and she spends the rest of the movie with this almost vacuous, puzzled, outraged look on her face, like, Black Ops are happening? This can't be legal. It just moment after moment after moment after moment. After the first big event, and I don't want to spoil Sicario too much. If you haven't seen it, definitely see it. After the first big thing goes down, at that exact point, by any reasonable standard, if she was going to try and hang this task force out to dry for the extrajudicial things they were doing, she had enough in one incident. Or alternately, she just could have said, nope, I'm going to go back to doing crackerjack work for hostage rescue. We're out of here. But again, that's not a reflection. She did a phenomenal job playing a badly written character. If that character had been better written, that movie would have been just Titanic. As it is, it's really awesome with one badly written but exceptionally well acted character. Michael Connor, are you saying Emily Blunt is pretty based or what? What if Aubrey Plaza is on here now? I don't want to lie. I've had a couple of famous people in my audience. I am sworn to silence. Are you guys like planning some celebrity thing over there in the chat? 3D anime. Sean Connery is Sean Connery is an NPC. With voice AI, I have like the lowest tier account of 11 Labs. It's pretty darn good. The thing about it is 11 Labs, like if you want a character to say, like if you type out we will defeat you, ha ha ha, you can put as many exclamation points, type it in all caps, try and have it italicized, whatever, in the 11 Labs API, and it will say, we will defeat you, ha ha ha. Now you can adjust that, but you'll never get, we will defeat you, ha ha ha. It doesn't, it cannot. We'll see you. If Chris Pine is in chat, get a job. Woman is like, ouch, L throwing the barbed darts. If you could convince celebrities to come on, you think you get my subs to power jump again? Probably. If I don't know, Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel's like, yeah, well, I'll go on your show, man. It's your family. That would probably, like, I'd look over and there'd be like 3,000 people watching or something like that. Oh, Max Headroom is cyberpunk. It's not post-apoc. Ozzy did an ad for World of Warcraft, but I mean, do you think he really did more than just kind of noodle around for a minute? I don't think so. There's a lot of celebs are asked to endorse stuff, and they're like not just like, oh, that's kind of nice, So, well, can you go up here and do this and say this? Oh, sure, fine. But I played the master on Buffy. Oh, that's very cool, Dungeon Minister. That's really, really super cool, actually. I'll have to tell my wife. She loves Buffy the Vampire Slayer. John Candy is DM. It doesn't handle emphasis at all, Jake. I mean, you can make it say very convincing things, but if you want, just it's hard to explain. I'll make an example for you guys. I'll find some voice stuff to dump into it, and then I'll play it back for you guys in a stream one night. Ani, get Ani on for Gamma World. Hey, don't bullshit me. Everybody's got an Arnie impression, and they're all bad. Mr. T was a night elf Mohawk, and who am I to doubt it? I'm not going to doubt him. I'm not going to doubt that Mr. T did that. But to go back to what I was saying, there's a famous case in point. Steve Jobs was over the moon that he got a chance to meet Mick Jagger. He went to New York City. He wanted to show Mick Jagger a computer, and he brought him like the second production Macintosh 128. It was just called the Macintosh at the time. And he thought it would be like this huge splash. The Jagger would just be super into it. And he asked him a few questions about, could it be used to sequence music and whatever. His daughter, Mick Jagger's daughter, one of his, I don't know, was, don't bullshit me, Drone Swam. Stop whining. Crumb laughs at the Arnold impression. Get to your power armor. Yeah, no, Jobs thought it would be like this great meeting of the minds, and Jagger was, yeah, that's kind of neat. And his daughter was all about it, and she was, and apparently Jobs was very disappointed, to which I say, good. I don't like Steve Jobs at all. I don't know. Woz strikes me as one of those people who would sit. I mean, I could be wrong, but he'd sit down and he'd start playing and he would immediately think about ways to computerize what you're doing. And I don't mean that in a negative way in the least. He would want to come up with some kind of appliances to make everything on the table. And I'm not talking about current, like what Wizards of the Coast is doing. Like he would want to make a dedicated dice rolling gadget like a Dragon Bone, but with an LCD screen. Good night, Patty. We'll see you. But I'm gonna go ahead and close a couple of things here real quick, because we're gonna wrap up here shortly. Actually, I'll leave that. Whoop. Go back to comments. There we go. Playing with Blue Oyster Cult. Good night, Connect. But if you guys haven't seen it, you can find these on YouTube. A guy started a mod for he pays like for the big expensive tier of what do you call it? I was just talking about it, 11 Labs, and he has done a mod so that all of Skyrim is fully voiced. He took all of the loops, all of the samples, and fed them in. And so now every NPC in Skyrim, because there's people you'd walk up to, they'd be like, hello. And then, you'd sit there and read the screen, but he's got their voices completely, completely voiced. But it's led to some interesting memes. Now that people have realized you can do it, they'll pay $5 and make Dagoth like, Nerevar, come to me through fire and war. Nerevar, who is this based individual playing Counter-Strike Go? Tell me, Nerevar, tell me. Meet me at Red Mountain, and we will smack some bitches. I don't know. So now, like, everybody's doing, it's like a thing. I should make one, I should do that. I have a book for you. It's like your show, confusing and random. But anyway, that's going to just about do it for me tonight, guys. I've gone for 2 hours. I had a more stressful afternoon than I wanted to, but I think I did a pretty good job through, as I have said before, not making a martyr of my anxieties on the air for you guys. But anyhow, I will go ahead and call it. So you guys, listen, have an absolutely wonderful evening. I love you all. Listen, if you're not already subscribed, if you stop by and you've watched a little bit of this madness, please click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications. I'll be back tomorrow. I might have a video or two for you during the day. And then tomorrow evening, we do a little preamble ramble. But at 9:00, guess what? We're going to play Gamma World for your amusement and my friend's interpretation. So enjoy. Do I play this casino weekly? I play this casino nightly. Are you kidding? 5 nights a week. Tip your wait staff. Try the veal. If you want to support the show on Subscribestar or Patreon, the links are right down below. The crab's pointing to them. You can buy me a coffee, PayPal direct, but have a lovely evening, and I am going to see you guys on the flip side. Until then, be good to each other. I love you all, and take care.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.